You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 447, the current state of Star Wars, at least as we see it. So this is an episode that has been long in the making. We've been talking about doing something like this for quite some time now, talking about trying to bring together all of the different media formats that exist in Star Wars, giving our takes on where we think things are going good, where things are not going so good. And on top of that, we've been recently talking about some of the more current themes that are kind of hitting Star Wars, specifically around whether Star Wars is too adult. Is it still for kids? Does it still feel like Star Wars, which is what you hear a lot of people talking about these days? So we've found a way to kind of bring all of that, encapsulate into this episode. Now, normally, Jonesy's with me. However, Jonesy's gallivanting all around the lower 50 states somewhere right now. He may be joining with us tonight here remotely, but in his place, I have the pleasure to bring on Gustavo Gus from Triad of the Force.
What's up?
How you doing, Gus?
How's it going, man? Doing really good. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm so glad you're here, buddy. I appreciate it, man. I was very fortunate to be on your show.
Yes.
And this is a great honor to have you on here. So thanks for making the time tonight.
No. It's my pleasure. Like I've been always happy to be here. I know we had met at Celebration, like one of those like serendipitous things, like in the line. I don't even remember what panel it was for, and all of a sudden I'm talking to Jonesy without even knowing it was Jonesy, and you come along. Right. It's like, oh, only one of those things that can only happen at Celebration. So ever since then, just chatting it up, being friends, and now it's a pleasure, to have you on my show and now to be here. It's great.
Yeah,
it's the magic of Star Wars.
Yeah, and we got a hot topic tonight. I know you're coming in hot after some House of the Dragon that you were watching, you may be a little fired up already, but we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, my heart pressure was up there, watching that. I still have like 10 minutes to go on the show because I couldn't get like the Apple TV to work and it was not streaming, so I started a little late, but like it was a pretty good episode. Lots of good drama going on, as only you can get from Game of Thrones / House of the Dragon. So
no, good to know. Okay, so we're gonna get into this here quickly, but before we do, I want to kind of know what your story is. Give us in like 10 words or less. No, tell us, like, how did you get into Star Wars? What was it that brought you into the fandom? All that great story that I'm sure that exists with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like I think since I was so young when I started watching Star Wars, I feel like I've settled on a version of the story, right? Because like now I think about it, and it's like, is that how it actually happened? But at this point, I'm just like, yeah, this is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Right, yeah.
But I'm pretty sure like the first time like I saw Star Wars was like around when the special editions were coming out. Like what's that? Okay. Like 94, 96,
97?
Something like that. And my dad took me to see those films, and it was just like, it was life changing. Just like, well, the world is different now. And I just remember like having seen those films in the big screen and immediately going to Blockbuster. I was just like, no, we're going to Blockbuster and we're buying the VHS, man. We're going to buy the VHS. So like after that, we just like burn through those and just watch them all the time. And then after the special editions came out on VHS, I got those again. So like that's how George Lucas got me, man. He got me on the wallet real quick, real young. So buying all the toys, and I was primed for it. And then perfect age at 99 and watch Phantom Menace and all that good stuff. So like I grew up with Star Wars. That's something that's always been present in my life, and it's something that I've always been enjoying. And once I started like going into middle school and in high school, I had like a deeper interest in like the expanded world. So I started reading some of the books in that arena. Although I will admit that I wasn't as prolific in terms of reading all the EU stuff as I maybe could have been. But
that's a lot, man. It's a big undertaking.
It's a lot. It's very intimidating, especially like when you start quote unquote late. It's like, okay, where the hell do I start?
Right. Yeah.
But I started, I think, where most people I think started. I started with the Thrawn Trilogy and went from there. And it was very sporadic in like how I was reading some of the EU stuff. There wasn't like a linear path because I don't think there is. But after a while, I got into college and all that stuff, and I kind of my Star Wars interest waned a little bit because I was more into other things in school, so I was busy with that. and had other things in my mind at the time. But then 2015 came along, and all of a sudden this whole
Oh,
acquisition, of Lucasfilm by Disney was kind of like, oh crap, like Star Wars is alive again. Because I remember
right.
those were dark times. It's just like, well, what's going to happen? Are we going to get more Star Wars? And there was a lot of uncertainty, at least in my mind. And all of a sudden, like after the Disney acquisition, I was like, okay, here we go. It's
Yeah.
we're getting
Yeah.
on the roller coaster, and we're on a new Star Wars journey. And ever since then, it's been kind of nonstop for me, especially during the COVID crisis that we've been going through. Being in isolation kind of had that world be a little more present, because you need that escapism because of all that stuff that was going on. And that's when the whole podcasting thing happened. So ever since then, it's been just like, if I was in the on the Star Wars boat 90% before, like with the whole podcasting thing, now it's just 120%. And I'm loving the
Yeah.
ride. I think we're having really good time for Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no shortage of Star Wars. That's for sure. We've got all kinds of stuff coming
And
in. A
in
lot of
so
which
many
we're going to
different
talk about
media.
tonight.
It's the great thing.
Yes.
Except maybe video
Yep.
games.
It's it. Yeah. Right. I mean, we say what a time to be alive. That certainly is the case with much of the Star Wars. So no, thanks for sharing that. And that's interesting. I didn't peg you as I'm going to call you an original trilogy person, although I don't know if that's fair, if that's where that's where you started. But if you had to put yourself in a box to put you on the spot, what would you say? Do you feel like you're an original trilogy fan, sequel, prequel?
Original trilogy. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So you're with me, and Jonesy, I think, is in that
I
boat
mean,
as
because I
well.
saw I saw the original trilogy first, right? I mean, I grew up.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
technically grew up with the prequels, but I saw the original
Right.
trilogy first. That's my Star
Right.
Wars. That's the first thing I saw, and then the prequels was the new thing. You know what I'm saying?
That was
So
your gateway drug.
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%.
Right. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's before we get any further in here. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Originally, this was going to be a Patreon exclusive. We are going to make this a public release. So tomorrow it'll hit all the normal feeds for Cantina Cast. And but before we go further, I do want to give a special thanks to all of our Patreon members, especially those that are part of the tribe level: Mike Borda, Kathy, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, and Jackson, as well as the Delusions of Grandeur. We've got Rod and Gene, who recently joined that tier as well as all the other Patreons. Thank you guys for everything you guys do to help keep the lights on and continue to support this page, whether it's just through your comments, the monetary stuff, whatever it is. You guys are there for us, and we really love you and do appreciate that. So without further ado, let's talk about the current state of Star Wars. And I want to start with this question of, and this is and let me just kind of put this disclaimer out there. All of this is subjective, right? Your mileage may vary. We're going to get into some of the pockets of fandom. There's a lot to be said about, echo chambers and vacuums and all that stuff. This is really just Gus and I talking about our own personal opinions, right? Things that we feel, things that we're seeing. So by no means is this, prescriptive in any way, right? So take it for what you will. But I think it's worth a healthy conversation, and it's going to be a healthy debate. So I want to talk about just Star Wars in general. Like, if you had to put a light on it, do you feel like we're moving in a positive light, or do you feel like we're moving in, are we stagnant? Are we regressing? Or is that just a loaded question? Or is it even fair to ask that kind of a question?
It depends, I guess, on how we're gonna look at it from, right? Are we looking at it from like fandom, or just like in content creation from Lucasfilm? Because I think those are two very different questions, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I think right. So what you're hitting on is it's a matter of the context, right? How do you frame the question? What's the context of the question itself? I think maybe just in general, like overall Star Wars, we can talk about fandom first. Where do you feel like the fandom's going? Do you feel like that's because, and I want you to answer, but my quick thought on that is we hear so many times that we're divided.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying for a very long time that Star Wars is just too big to say that we're divided.
Mm-hmm.
We're segmented now in a lot of different ways, positive and negative, pro and cons. I think we're just segmented because it's just that big.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer a black and white 50-50. You're on this side or you're on that side, and the lines are so cleanly delineated in that way. I just don't believe that. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's complicated, obviously, as you said. I don't think it's as binary, right? As some people put it. I do agree with that. Although I do think
Yeah.
that there's like some level, and it's happening with all the fandoms, though. If you really look at it, with like the Snyderverse fans and MCU now, with everything that's happening now, and obviously with Star Wars since forever, there's always been like some part of the fandom that's just like, I think, to come at their fandom from bad faith, honestly, and just like, and it's not about liking or disliking a show or the direction that media is going in, but it's just approaching it from, a place of selfishness that I think is very negative in terms of like how you engage with that media, and two, how you engage with other fans that are around you, because one of the reasons that we become fans of any media, be it Star Wars, Marvel, DC, whatever,
Hmm.
Lord of the Rings, it's because of our love for something and because we want to share that love with other people. And I feel like some elements in fandom just like aren't in a positive place. And again, it's not to say that you should like everything, because I don't like everything.
Yeah, right.
But you also have to like approach it from a genuine and a constructive way, especially when you're engaging with other fans. It's just like you have to come at them with positivity, right? What do we gain with just like one having like fights amongst each other about like what media is best, especially when you're there to just antagonize people? And what positivity do you get? Just like not engagement, but not liking the thing that you like. If you don't like it, just get out of the fandom. I guess it's just like just it's for your own mental health. So like I think that part is there. I do think that that's a minority. I do think that most fans are cool people that just want to have fun and enjoy it and just be engaged with healthy debate. But but yeah, it's kind of disappointing sometimes when like you go to Star Wars Celebration and there's so much love and so much positivity there, and then you come you come back to
Right to
reality, and
Twitter.
then
Yeah.
you come back to reality, so to speak, and then you see
Yeah.
the Twitter discourse, and it's kind of like disappointing. It's just like, ah, I was just there, and it was so different from what this is. But
Right.
at the end of the day, I think that's just like pockets of people that just like project that energy, and I think that I rather invest my energy and the energy of my podcast and the people that I want to engage with in a different type of energy that like helps
Hmm.
build constructive conversations that are about, one, loving Star Wars, and two, projecting something that hopefully the good folk as Lucasfilm maybe hear someday and just apply that into the stories that they're telling. Because at the end of the day, I want more Star Wars, and I want Star Wars for
Yeah.
everybody too. And I think we'll get to that because I don't think Star Wars is just one thing. I think it's a plethora of things, and that's why I'm actually very happy with the direction that Star Wars is going right now. I think that there is
Hmm.
something for everybody that they can kind of connect with and engage with, and I want to see even more of that. So, like,
Yeah.
I think we can delve into that a little deeper. But I do think that, especially like with Andor and and the High Republic and all these things, like it's kind of slowly opening the gates to like be what I've wanted Star Wars to be for a while now. It's just like, hey, here's a palette of things for everyone to enjoy. If Star Wars Resistance isn't for you, then maybe Clone Wars is for you, and if Clone Wars isn't for you, then maybe Andor is for you. So it's just about how do you connect with it, because like you were saying when you were asking me like what era of Star Wars is my jam, it's the same thing, because I think now there's so many entry points into Star Wars that I don't think that we have necessarily to like pigeonhole like how someone is going to engage with that media, because it could be through comic
Yeah.
books and that's all you like, and I think that's fine. So I think this is a great time because of all the different avenues for which to engage with the wars, man. But that's just
Yeah.
me.
No, that's no. You did a great job of covering all the bases there, which kind of sets the stage for a lot of what we're going to continue to discuss. One thing, in my quick opinion, as far as where the fandom is, are we moving in a positive light? Are we moving in? Is it regressing? Is it stagnant? Again, it really is. It really is on. It matters probably most depending on what you want from Star Wars,
Mhm.
and we're going to get into that a little bit. I want to pull back that just a bit. I threw this. I've been saying this on the last couple of shows that Star Wars is for everyone, but not everyone is for all of Star Wars. Meaning, and I've never really kind of
Mhm.
explained that. Hopefully, it's self-explanatory. But if it's not, if it sounds confusing, what I'm saying is we're at a point now, like I said earlier, where Star Wars is just so huge, right? It's so expansive. We've got books, we've got adult themes, we've got stuff for the kids, we've got stuff for the really little kids, we've got video games. It's just its own monster now. And it's not the days of, growing up in the 90s or even in the 80s with the original trilogy and Lucasfilm, where everything was kind of, very small in
Mhm.
terms of
Mhm.
scope, right? So to that end, there's with that many people that are invested in a franchise like this, there's going to be people that are looking for different things in Star Wars, right? Especially when you start talking about the pockets of fandom that exist. The Raylos, for example, which I include myself as part
Mm.
of, right? Honorary member, although no one's ever declared me that. But I mean, I actually enjoy reading and listening to these Raylo stories that are
Mhm.
in literature. It's not for everybody. I get it, right? And I know there's some people that somehow have looked at this and said, "Well, that to me is not. That to me is foreign. That to me is alien. That no longer
Mhm,
feels
mhm.
like Star Wars, and therefore all of Star Wars is now tainted, and I want out."
Yeah.
Right? Most recently, there was I forget the gentleman's name. He's a YouTuber. He kind of came on YouTube and was like, "I'm bailing, right? I've had it with Star Wars. This just doesn't
Mhm,
feel
mhm.
like Star Wars to me." But he's coming from a place of all or nothing, like that. Like it's that all. It's like black or white.
Mhm.
And I guess the point I'm saying when I say it's for everybody, but not all of it is for everyone, is that there's going to be things that you're going to like. There's going to be
Mhm.
things that you don't like. Things
100%.
that resonate with you, things that don't. Things that are going to hit really close to your heart, things that are going to hit really close to your mind, and other things that you could really just not have to do without. The cool and nice thing about this is that you can pick and choose what fandoms you want to be a part of, right?
Right.
You can choose if you want to be an OT person, go, man, there's so many forums out there and groups and stuff that are just all about that stuff. And there are people that are doing that without dumping on the other pockets of fandom that exists.
Mhm, mhm.
If you want to be a Legends person, there's all kinds of people or all kinds of groups
Right.
out there that are just focused on Legends and love Legends and talk about Legends like it is the best thing. So I think it is for everybody. You just got to find where your group is, right? So that you can stay part of the fandom and not feel like you're giving into the mouse, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Or the corporate, entity that is Disney. I know there's a lot of people that are really upset with that. So,
Right, and
anyways,
it's an interesting thing though because like my argument with all of this thing is like yeah we can talk about Disney and like their corporate practices and whatever because that's a valid conversation but to just like lump everything that is happening with Star Wars it's like oh this is just Disney whatever they're ruining everything but then also be like oh MCU is the best thing that ever happened it's like well they're made by the same people so what's really the conversation here uh,
yeah,
and to that point, it's just like engage with it honestly. It's like, if you're not liking it, then no one's forcing you to watch it.
no,
You can just buy your Blu-rays and watch the old stuff and just enjoy that and just stick with that. Like I said, like no one's making anybody engage with media. It's a
yep,
free country. You
yep,
can watch whatever you want. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about like what it's like I think it's about positivity, man. I don't want to like engage with something that's gonna like stress me out and make me angry and make me wanna just be negative toward other people. Again, like I'm here because I love Star Wars and I love talking with other people that love Star Wars too. So it's just like, hey, there's things I have liked, things that I haven't liked, and at the end of the day, it's like just how do we engage with it and how do we engage with each other? And like I said,
yep,
if before 2015, before the acquisition, after Episode 3, no, there weren't shows, there weren't gonna be more movies. I mean, yeah, George Lucas wanted to do Episode 7 and all that stuff, but we were in a drought, of like a new content
right,
and now we're privileged we're spoiled in this new Star Wars era where we have like so much crap. We have Mando, Book of Boba Fett, we have Obi-Wan, now we have Andor, Ahsoka's coming, we have the books, we have the comics, we have like so much stuff that I feel like sometimes a lot of people that are complaining are just sound like entitled little children because it's just like this is
right,
this is
yeah,
more Star Wars than we've ever had in at any point of Star Wars existing. And instead of being like, just calming down, checking yourself before you wreck yourself, and just finding the
hmm
media that you connect with, just complain about it. It's
yeah,
a very spoiled and entitled attitude, I think, and we just have to kind of check ourselves and just enjoy ourselves again. Find that joy that Star Wars gave you from that first time you saw it, and just try to connect with that again. Because I think that's what we're all here for. It's just like finding that joy.
yep. And there's people out there that I think that are complaining that we don't get enough Star Wars or Star Wars is coming out too fast. I think a lot of I've heard people say, well, it's really about it's really about quality versus quantity. All of that is so subjective
Mhm,
though, and
mhm,
I don't understand why they can't see that.
mhm,
Uh, talking about comparing a show like Andor to Book of Boba Fett, it's night and day,
yeah.
right? They're two different tones, two different meanings. They're trying to accomplish two different things and so, yeah, you're
Mhm,
going to find people that really resonate with Book of Boba Fett. And then you're going to find people that are all about Andor and
mhm.
what they're trying to do there. And that's the whole point of this, right?
And
It's
that's
not,
and that's
it's,
fine.
yeah, absolutely. No, I'd agree. So now I want to talk about one thing too, because this is, recently especially since now the onset of Andor. Andor is really, it's been kind of this. I always call it this watershed moment, right? With Star Wars, it's really taken us in new directions, and what it's really doing that I don't think enough people are focused on is it is setting a precedence for what Star Wars is.
Mhm.
And with Andor, you now have Tony Gilroy, Diego Luna coming out talking about Star Wars. This is not a show for kids, right? If you've had a chance to watch the first 4 episodes now, you can kind of see where they come from. They're not saying, we're not talking about gratuitous violence.
Mhm.
We're not talking about gratuitous sex, nothing like that, right? It's really about the tone. It's really about the themes, the content, the real world circumstances that we're dealing with, and the real world lives of people that would be impacted by something like a galactic empire
Right.
coming in and casting a shadow over the galaxy, right? Those are the things that we're talking about. But that, I guess the question that I have, I want to go back to something that Lucas said back in 1977. He said it in 77. He said it in 2017. He said it in 2019. And there's all you can go out there and take a look at. There's some very elaborate quotes, but in short, what he said was that Star Wars is for 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that is still the case? Do you feel like this is, when you have a show like Andor, that's clearly, in my opinion, clearly not for 12-year-olds. I mean, like 12-year-old could watch it. They may enjoy it. But it doesn't feel like it's targeted towards them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
so does that change?
But I think, again, it's like one of those like weird contextually subjective things, because I compare it to when I was growing up, and like my parents let me watch Terminator 2 and Predator and like all these R-rated movies.
Those are life-changing movies,
and
though.
Those movies, they had a massive marketing toy campaign for children, and they were still like adult movies. So it's like one of these weird things. It's like, what does it really mean to be for children? Because Pixar is for children, but adults can enjoy it very, very, very much. And there's a lot of adult themes in Pixar films that adults can also enjoy, and those are made for children. So in a way, I see Andor as a reverse Pixar. I wouldn't say it's for adults necessarily. I would say it's like for maybe 16 years old, yeah, younger. But children can still enjoy it, because like what you said, there's nothing there that's too explicit that a child can't watch. So like that's I think that's fine for now. But then again, to George's point, like I think media can evolve and can break away from some of the things that it's been used to doing, and I think that there can be like other things that can be explored, such as Andor. Like I don't think that Star Wars necessarily should have R-rated explicit adult content. I think that might be like pushing the envelope,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of room to play there in that, in that age group that can be cross-generational in that sense. So is it for kids? Yeah, I 100% agree it's for kids, but that doesn't mean that adults can't enjoy it. And yeah, Andor, I think it's a step in the right direction to have like more mature stories that can also be enjoyed by children. And once they, grow up and mature a little bit,
Come of age, yeah.
they can appreciate it a little more. Because even the prequels, man, yeah, those are PG movies, and Revenge of the Sith was PG-13. But if you look at them now as an adult, there's a lot of like adult theming in there about like politics and corruption, imperialism, and all those things that like when you're 11 years old, that you don't get that. You don't understand the taxation of trade routes. But all of a sudden, once you watch it, with a different point of view, it's like,
I still don't.
No one
yeah,
does. No one does. But you know that there's something at work.
Right, yeah.
Something that's at work there. And I think Andor is kind of like the same thing, but in reverse. It's just like it's targeted to like an older group, but I think kids can enjoy it. Like I wouldn't mind if my nephews watched it, because I still think it's still Star Wars. It's
Right.
it's what I feel Marvel did to an extent with the Captain America films, where the first ones is like, the first Avenger. It's pretty standard superhero lore, whatever that anyone can enjoy. But then Winter Soldier kind of shifted the tone a little bit. It's like, okay, we can do something a little more serious. Which again, serious is subjective.
Yeah, sure, 100%.
But that's where I stand. Like I don't know if that made any sense, but
no, it did.
But
in fact,
I think I stand by it.
I'm gonna go to the chat because we've had people chiming in and some folks agreeing with you. So first, Ash says, Albert, you show. Thanks, Ash. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. No, Ash is a good friend. So Joel Davis says the issue with Star Wars is that it's too big and it's not going to please everyone. There will never be anything that unifies Star
Yeah,
Wars fans ever. I subscribe to that.
I
I'll
agree.
co-sign
Yeah.
that 100%.
Gary Kurtz
Uh,
could rise from the dead and reunite with John Caston and George Lucas and come back and redo Episode 7, and people will still hate it.
Still hate it.
So yeah,
Some people.
some people,
Yep.
yeah.
Derpy Gaming says, I've enjoyed Andor very much. It's different than regular Star Wars. Jonesy has chimed in. We found him. Star Wars is definitely for 12-year-olds. It's not only for 12-year-olds. Jonesy also goes on to say Georgia Star Wars was intended for that age group, but we have to evolve. And then finished with saying something else is that 12-year-olds are subjected to and understand way more than we did at that age 30 years ago. And I think that's a good point. Like,
And they're way more
you know,
tolerant than we are. So
they absolutely are. Right or wrong, good or bad, that is certainly the case. And then the last thing I want to highlight is what Joel continued to say here. He says, I mean, I personally feel like George was wrong when he said Star Wars was for 12-year-olds. I think Star Wars can be for different ages. And I agree. Like it can be for everybody, like you said. And I'm not going to weigh in on my own opinion other than to say that I, again, co-sign everything that you said. It is originally, I know that was George's intent, right? That was his intent, was for 12-year-olds. But where do those 12-year-olds go? You know, they age, they get older, and they can still find love and they still enjoy those original trilogies like myself. I mean, I was, an original trilogy kid and I still enjoy those movies, but I'm older now and I want to see things like Andor. Like that stuff resonates really well with me. And so it's just got to evolve. Like a few people have already said it, but
mhm.
Star Wars does have to evolve at some
And
point.
it's not an either or thing. It's both and. Like I think there's
Yeah.
it's a galaxy, right? It's not if Marvel can have like the variety that it's been having lately, which I think is wonderful, then why can't Star Wars? Like I'd see a comedy show like bring back Star Wars detours, bring and we have Andor, we have detours, we have so many things that we can do with it that it's just it would be absurd to not explore every avenue, you know? And I think that's one of the things that's gonna happen now with that I forgot the name of the show, but it's the High Republic show is gonna come out on YouTube or whatever. That's, more targeted for, like, even younger kids and stuff.
Even younger kids, right?
So we're gonna have that, and I think that's the good thing about where we're going now, especially since we've pumped the we as if I have anything to do with it. Since Lucasfilm has pumped the brakes on the films, I think that they kind of realized that they were going a little too fast, too furious on those.
Hmm.
And I think that this has been like a good thing of like, okay, let's just create content for like a wider net and see what's working. And I think that it is working, and I think we're gonna see more of that, hopefully.
Yeah. Gary said Star Wars is larger than George. I kind of think that is the issue. Some fans live in the George Lucas bubble, but don't like any other Star Wars
Mm,
content. You know, and this is not to toot our own horns, but we've said this on the show many, many times. I think it was very gracious of George to acknowledge that Star Wars was that big and that for it to live on, it needed to go somebody that can kind of take the baton, proverbial baton, and expand upon it. And I don't know that I've seen anything recently where he's even commented on Andor yet. I imagine at some point he will. He'll get asked inevitably that question, right? What did you think of Andor? Have you seen it? Do you like it, etc.? But I think at the end of the day, what he was really looking at was like, wow, this thing is huge, and it either can die with me, or I'm going to hand it over to somebody. And yeah, maybe there's a risk involved there, right? For him feeling like they're going to take this and do things that maybe I didn't feel comfortable doing, or I felt like wasn't part of it. But
mhm,
it's no longer my decision, right? I don't want to put it in the hands of someone else to make that decision and do what's best for the franchise so that he can live on well beyond me, right?
mhm,
This is his
mhm.
gift to us, and why he made that decision. So on that level, I would agree that that's kind of what Gary's saying. Not to put words in his mouth. So before we wrap this up and kind of move on to just to some of the more specific things here, the media's, with Andor, we've gotten some adult themes here. Do you think? I mean, do you have any thoughts or any speculation or anything personal that you would like to see explored in Star Wars? And if you say a taxation, I'm cutting you right now.
No, I don't want to. I don't want them to talk about taxes. That's because I don't understand taxes. Unfortunately, I wish I did because
Right,
maybe I
right.
could pay less of them. But I think Andor is kind of doing what I've been wanting Star Wars to do for a long time, and it's kind of like bring because I don't know how your chat feels about this, but like Star Wars has always been inherently political. George Lucas
No, it is.
has never been shy about that. He has never, shied away from saying what those political ideas that he's coming from are. But especially with the original trilogy and the prequels, everything was kind of subtext. Everything is there, but it's covered in the veneer of Star Wars. So
Yes.
you kind of have to read between the lines to kind of understand what he's getting at. Which it's one approach, which I appreciate it, but I wanted a Star Wars that kind of like just says the things that it wants to say, you know?
Right.
And I think that that's what Andor has been giving us, or at least giving me. Because we're talking about my opinion about it. Because Andor
Mhm.
is hitting like on all those things that I've been wanting to see in Star Wars, not just by its cast and its wonderful representation, not just with Diego and Adria, but like the rest of the cast. I think is wonderful and giving us the Hispanic, and we're in Hispanic Heritage Month, the perfect show for Hispanic Heritage Month.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So that's one aspect, but then also using that to also talk about colonial issues and imperialism and displacements and migrants' journeys and all those things are things that like are the text of the story. They're
Right.
not
Right.
subtext. It's sort of they're in the forefront. It's just like being like straightforward political. Obviously, I mean, it's a political thriller, so you have to have politics there. But it's talking about like those real life issues, right? That George has always put into Star Wars, but it's front and center and not shying away from it. Like I think the I mean, I love the sequel trilogy too, so I'm not gonna bash the sequel trilogy, but I do think that the sequel trilogy kind of like pushed away a little bit from uh, talking about those themes a little bit because I don't know, maybe it was like an adverse reaction to the talky politics parts of the prequels, but I think that's something that the sequels failed in. So to kind of have it be brought back in full force like it is in Andor is something that I'm absolutely loving and something that I want to keep seeing because it's also been in Clone Wars, but Clone Wars is animated, so it's also a little bit of subtext
Hmm.
in there. But yeah, and again, I don't think every show should be like this. I don't want every show to be like this because then it would be monotone, right? I like I said at the beginning, I do want variety. I want shows like this. I want shows like Mando. I want Book of Boba Fett. I want I want I want a whole plethora of things. But yeah, Andor is definitely doing it for me right now with like all the theming that it's been doing.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you. I mean, Lucas is always all right. You're right. I mean, the subtext of the original trilogy was the Vietnam War. By the time we get to the prequel trilogies, I think there's a lot to be said about some of the subtext with the American politics at the time, right? And specifically, without again, I'm not drawing political sides or anything, but we had somebody like George Bush, and there was a lot of people feeling like he was kind of taking too much power, right? There's some parallels that run there with what was going on in the prequel trilogy. So it's always been there. But you're right. With Andor, it's front and center, right? They pulled the Band-Aid off, if you will. We're talking about it, and there are certain direct parallels. So our own history, right? And almost kind of like cautionary tales of where things could potentially
Mhm,
go
mhm,
for,
mhm,
maybe not our country right now, but certainly other countries in the real world. So on that regard, in that regard, I think they're hitting the right themes and they're doing the right things because the things need to be explored.
mhm,
The Where we go from here, when I said it earlier that it was a watershed moment, there's other and I jokingly said I want the ER at Starlight Beacon, and it's just a drama about people coming and going that are hurt, right?
right.
Give me that show. I say I'm joking, but I'm really not. Give me that show. Okay. On top of that, there's, I don't think we should, I'm with you 100%. Like, I don't know that we ever need to get into like rated R, gratuitous, graphic type stuff. I just don't think that belongs, right? And that may sound hypocritical because I just said, oh,
Right.
there's somebody out there for everybody, but
Mhm,
there is a line, right? I think there's a natural line that somebody like Disney will say, we're not going to go past this. Okay. But that said, if we get into the Alkalite or we get into, there's this whole Sith story in my head that we've talked about in the show where you've got like a master and apprentice, and every couple of episodes, the apprentice is killing off the master, and it's
mhm.
basically the rule of two, a very darker side of that. I think they can still do that, right? And give us the implied violence, give us the implied fear,
I
and
mean,
really kind of,
to that point with like implied violence,
yeah.
like I remember when I was watching Clone Wars, like for the first time, like, and I was just like, well, it's a kids show, so I'm not, I was tempering my expectations, but that show got brutal. Like they were killing people left and
Mm,
right in that. So I'm just
There's,
so Star Wars has
yeah,
already been there. There's been
right.
episodes
And
where it's just like,
Ventress is
whoa,
one of
like,
them.
yep. So
Ventress has an I've seen in there where she stabs him and then like walks up to him as this guy is impaled. And I can't remember if she talks to him or kiss, whatever she does. But I mean, it's like you know exactly what's
Mhm.
happened, and it is very dark, and they hold on that shot for a few seconds too. So it's not like it cuts away immediately. You know,
Right.
there's something vile about it. So yeah, I think we'll get there at some point. I don't know if, and I'm not advocating for it. It's just eventually I think we will, because again, the fandom's just going to grow to that point where those types of more mature themes and will give us more variety.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's move on to video games, because this may be a quick topic. Because I mean, we don't.
Unfortunately.
So unfortunately, right. I mean, how much do you get into? I know you follow video games pretty closely. I've seen some of your posts and things that you talk about on the show, but like, how do you feel about video games in general? Is this something that you look forward to every year? Or are you like me, that's constantly disappointed because everything gets canceled or pushed back?
Eh,
Where are you with your video game love?
well, again, to contextualize everything, when I was like in high school and I was growing up and I was in college, like I would, well, actually not college, high school. I would never call myself a serious gamer, but I would game. And I had my
Yeah,
consoles and stuff, and like obviously Star Wars was usually like the main games that I would play back in the day. But like after college and starting to work and all that stuff, I kind of stopped gaming for a long time. But a couple of years ago, I guess, like I bought finally like a PS4 and got back into it a little bit. So I have been big into Battlefront 2, and when that's been
that's a great
and
game, by the way.
that
I
was a
still say it
that was a
is.
journey. Oh yeah, I loved it how it is now. But I remember that journey, man, when we started with Battlefront
Well,
2.
yeah, it was a rough
That was
start. Yeah,
painful. So I was able to get a PS5. I have a PS5, although I am ashamed to say that I have not bought any game for it. It's like I got it, and all I did was like upgrade all my games from the PS4 into the PS5, and have not played it. I've been too busy with work, unfortunately.
it's
And
just bragging
but
rights at this point. But go on, yeah.
I don't know, a reverse brag, I guess.
All right.
But I have been keeping a close eye, like, on all the game stuff because I do want Star Wars games, like, I guess I remember with Battlefront 2, like, the last, like, everyone's, like, talking about the next DLC, and it's gonna be Ahsoka and Ventress, and, like, everyone's excited for all that crap, and I was waiting. I'm like, "Okay, here we go, Ahsoka," and all of a sudden, boom, DICE is gonna shut production, continuing service for the game. I was just, like, disappointed. I'm like, "Why is this the curse of every Battlefront series? Why can't we just
Yeah.
just just keep going? Like everyone's loving this game, and or at least give us a Battlefront 3, but for everything I've heard, it's dead in the water. But yeah, I remember the golden age of Star Wars games during like what was it, 2002, 2003, when you were getting like a game a week it seemed, and it was like a game for everybody. And like now we're barely getting like any games whatsoever in the last 2 or 3 years. What was the last game? Squadrons, which
Yep.
wasn't even a AAA game. I know disrespect, but that was aimed at me because I'm not a big first person piloting gamer. Yeah,
Simulator kind of
so I
game.
was just
Yeah.
like, "Well, not that game's not for me." So yeah, so I've been waiting. It's been a journey. It's been arduous. It's been exhausting. There's been tears. There's been stress. But that's because I think that is the one Star Wars department where there is nothing happening, lots of rumors. It's almost like the movies. Like they keep announcing things and then they cancel it, or then they just
Yep.
like
Yeah.
ghost you and just don't follow up on the game. So that
Yep.
they pretend you'll just forget about it. But yeah, it's on life support to use to talk about your ER Starlight Beacon show.
Right. I'm telling you, man, I'm going to write the pilot, and you'll be one of the first people I share that with.
Hey,
Um, so very similar, like the movies. I think we have such fond memories of the movies, and that's why I think and we'll get to the movies here probably towards the end, but we have such fond memories, and that's why we're so passionate about the movies. And I think video games are no exception.
mhm,
There have been some amazing, incredible Star Wars games going back to Star Wars Arcade.
mhm,
Back in personally for me, that game in '78. We had some great runs on the Super Nintendos, the 16-bit, the 8-bit games. We've always had LucasArts kind of steering a lot of that and really
mhm,
putting out some great quality products. Yeah. And then we go into this, like you said, we went into a dry spell, and it felt weird. It felt uncomfortable
mhm.
that we weren't getting Star Wars games. And then we look back and we question ourselves. We question very similar things that you just said right now. Like, where are the games? Where are they at? Or how come we don't have that same feeling? Why am I not feeling that excited about these
It's
games?
like, don't they like money?
Yeah,
It's like these guys make
exactly. Yeah,
money.
I've got money. You got a PS5. Why make a game for you?
Right.
You're probably going to throw down some cash, right? Splash the cash for those games. So I think we look back on video games, and that's why they're so important to us. And right now, it does feel a little frustrating because things do get canceled and things do get
Mhm,
pushed back. the two biggest titles for me personally that have come out recently that I think are just phenomenal. Battlefront 2, which I would agree, really rocky start, right? But even in the rocky start, I'll say this:
Still fun.
the best time that we had though was we were online with people that listened to our show, like some of our supporters, and we were playing multiplayer. And the game sucked, and there was the loot crates and that whole controversy, right?
Yeah.
But man, we were up till like 3, 4 in the morning, just laughing and having fun and socializing, talking about Star Wars. Great times, right? But as a game, I think it stands on its own. I think people really need to give that game a shot, go back and play it.
Yeah.
They've done a lot to clean it up, and it's a lot
And
of fun.
especially because I remember people comparing it to like the original Battlefront 2 on PS2, which I also had, and I also loved. But I'm just like, people were hyping. Like, I think that's the problem sometimes. I think when we look back at the things we liked when we were kids or when we were growing up or whatever, and like that nostalgia kind of like blinds you a little bit and gives you like those rose-colored glasses. And if you go back, like for example, heroes versus villains in the original Battlefront 2, every single hero and villain basically had the exact same moves. It's like there's no variety in them. They all moved exactly the same, except maybe Darth Maul. This new Battlefront 2, like every single character
totally
is
different.
completely different, different force power, different strength, different. They moved it. It's just like, come on, like the game has a lot of crap. Like I know that the original Battlefront 2 had more troops or whatever, but they're just reskins of the same thing. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
It's still a great game, but this Battlefront 2 just took everything to the next level, especially with the environments. It's just crazy. You were in the movie. Like someone like Geonosis, I remember when I was playing that for the first time, I was just like, I'm in episode 2 right now. And it actually looks better than episode 2.
Right. So. Yep. So in the other one, and I won't elaborate on this one because you'll probably stir up a whole bunch of controversy, but I thought Disney Infinity 3.0 was pretty amazing. I know a lot of people didn't play it, and it is kind of a kid's game, but it was they did some really great stuff with that game, and just especially from the Star Wars perspective. Okay, but that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to ask you about is I want to go through the list of games that we got coming up. There's a number of games that we have on the horizon. Some of these I'm going to call them vaporware because they really are just press releases, and there's not a lot behind them yet. But I want to just give me your quick thoughts on. You tell me, do you think we'll ever see it, or do you think we'll not see it? Okay. First one, Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, we're saying
it's gonna happen. All right.
Yeah.
Respawn Star Wars first person shooter. A lot of people want this one.
I want it, but doesn't even have a title, so I'm not holding my breath.
All right. And I don't know a lot about this one, but the Bit Reactor's Star Wars strategy game. Do you strategy games?
I do.
You
not.
do those?
I do not. No.
Okay, so we're gonna say no on that one for
you. Sure.
What about Star Wars Eclipse?
That's
keep it kid friendly. Keep it kid friendly.
It's a complicated one. I'm on the hashtag Blackout Star Wars Eclipse, and we can get into that if we'd like. But that being said, that's a game that actually looks very exciting, just because of the era and the High Republic and all that stuff. So I think that's a game that has a lot of potential. I do think that we'll see it, because I haven't seen anything to indicate that Disney or Lucasfilm are doing anything about it. Although I have read articles that they're having trouble with the development because they've been losing lots of animators or whatever people that work in the game.
Yeah. I mean, they've got their they've got some problems that have nothing to do with the controversy.
So, but I think it's happening. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna say I don't think that one makes it out. I might change my opinion of that a year from now, but it's so muddled in problems that, usually that trend, it doesn't trend very well, right? For video game companies and games like that. So we'll see. We'll see if they can pull it all together. What about the Kotor remake? Are you a Kotor fan?
I never played Kotor. Like I had a bunch of friends that play Kotor. That's not my style of game that I prefer to play. But I really would like to see the remake. I'm all for like bringing back stuff that people love, and like that one had a lot of people excited for it. So I hope they can pull it off, because that'll make a lot of people happy.
And I'll lump these next two together because these guys are, and I think it'll happen. Honestly, the Kotor remake. I'm suspicious as to what it's going to be, whether it's truly a remake, or they've completely gutted it and I'm for it, whatever it is, because I'm a huge, I don't know if you can see some of the stuff I got back here, but I'm a huge Old Republic fan. So I'm going to buy it either way. But the next two, I really don't. Again, we don't have a whole lot, but Ubisoft is making. They've got a Star Wars project, and then they also got Skydance New Media has a Star Wars project, and those have been announced, but we don't have anything else. So no,
Right,
maybe not.
right.
I don't know. Who knows,
At
right?
this point, it's just like I don't hold my breath anymore. It's just like, okay, we'll see. And it's like, this we don't. It's like the movies. Like, oh, we're getting Rogue Squadron. Oh, well, maybe not. Oh, we're getting
I'll
the
believe it
Ryan
when I see
Johnson
it. Yeah.
trilogy. Maybe not. So at this point, it's just like the only thing that I think has been reliable in terms of like announcements and actually them keep fulfilling their promises has been publishing. So I will believe Del Rey
Hmm.
and Disney Books or whoever publishes all the other stuff. I will believe them when they announce something because I know that will come out, even if it's delayed. But games and movies, I don't have faith anymore. So it's just like I'll just wait till the trailer comes, and then and even then, it's just like okay, even this is a little flimsy. So uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
they've broken me in that department.
I'm going to go to Rob. Rob said Disney needs to make adjustments. Movies, video games, and even toys have stalled. And we're going to touch on that quickly. Rob's a big toy guy, too. I'm not going to point fingers. It just needs a refresh. I don't think anybody would disagree with that
Well,
statement. I think
toys have been weird, especially with like the Black Series and all those action figures. I think it's just odd, especially when you compare with with the MCU. Like for Thor: Love and Thunder, like every Marvel movie, you get all the tie-in toys like right on release,
oh, yeah.
and like
Yeah, they're all over the
and with
walls.
Star Wars, you have it's pulling teeth, man. It's just I was surprised that we just got on a Hasbro whatever Pulse thing it's called yesterday. I was surprised that we got
Hmm.
all the Andor stuff as quickly as we did because for some movies and shows we don't get anything until months after the fact, and it's not even ready to
Yeah.
ship. So it's like you get the pre-order, but then you have to wait like 6 more months to get it. And even Rise of Skywalker, for Rise of Skywalker, where are the toys? It's like yeah, there was like the Dark Ray and we had two or three more, but like there weren't any toys for Rise of Skywalker basically. So it's kind of like yeah, we're missing a lot of things there on the toy and video game department. And I don't know why with Marvel it's different than with Lucasfilm, but something needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, let's segue into toys since we're kind of talking about it now. I mean, it's dismal in my opinion.
Mhm.
And I've seen, it's weird because I see people post on Twitter and they'll take a shot of like Walmart, right?
Mhm.
And there's
And
like some Walmarts somewhere that actually have a couple of toys, but by and large, like they're just empty.
mhm,
There's nothing on the shelves and there's nothing at the Targets and et cetera. And now some of this you could argue, one would argue that we are in we're in 2022 and most people buy their stuff online and, the days of going into these toy stores are, few and far between or just limited now. But that's not the case. Like you said, with some of these other, like the Batman,
mhm,
right? Like that movie, I don't even know that a 6-year-old should be watching that movie first, right? But that's not my choice. But
mhm,
nonetheless, they had all kinds of toys for that thing. There was a whole freaking wall with
mhm,
the Batman toys. They're all on clearance now, but they were all there. And yet there was nothing that had came out for Star Wars when The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, there was the Zori Bliss that came out.
mhm,
I think they did a Black Series figure for her. Or the Sith Jet Trooper came out, but it's not like the days of old where there's a toy for everything. Even Mando. Let's talk about Mandalorian, right? Arguably the biggest thing that's happened to Star Wars in years.
mhm, mhm.
The collectability of Grogu and Mando and the armor, the Mandalorians, right? All that stuff, highly marketable stuff. And I know we see it. We see it all over lunchboxes and beach towels and you name it, it's on there.
Now,
But even
but
then,
when it
like,
came out, like there was
but when
nothing
it
there.
came out, there was nothing there, right? So that took a while for them to get up to that. But even then, like and that's really the only thing that's ever on the shelves that I see is like some Mandalorian, Baby Yoda, whatever on the shelves. But it just feels like that ship has sailed. Like I don't know that we're ever going to get back to the days of having shelves stocked. The days of '80s Toys R Us where it's just a wall of Star Wars toys. And do you think that's a reflection on the popularity of Star Wars? Is it a reflection on the current state of our economy, the supply and demand? Is it a risk? Is it a risk to manufacture, 20,000? I'm just throwing a number out there. I have no idea, but 20,000 Zori Bliss figures and roll the dice and hope that they don't, sit and go into a landfill somewhere.
Like, at least with, like and I collect some of the Black Series, so that's what I'm more familiar with. I can't speak for, like, all the toys. But my perspective is different. Actually, I do think that the reason that there aren't a lot of them out there is because of the collector's market. I feel like because people just buy these for the either to keep in your own personal collection or to resell them, in the third party map market. That's why we don't have a lot of availability for all these things, either online or in department stores. But I think it's a combination of that and then like Hasbro or whoever's making, yeah, it's Hasbro, of like just not
Hmm.
pumping out enough toys to one satisfy. Well, actually, no, I do think that they know what they're doing because they're running out of stock, so they are fulfilling their financial needs. I just think that the problem is getting the toys out for marketing when the show is out or the movie's out, because it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, you take so long to make these toys that it's like it's not tied in sufficiently enough, at least in my opinion. And then you don't make the toys for all the characters either. I feel that some characters
Right.
get like
They're
disregarded
just left
too.
out.
And every time they do like a pipeline reveal, it's always like, oh, we have like the reskins Scout Trooper for Return of the Jedi. It's like, how many more Stormtrooper action figures do we need? We don't even have a. I was surprised that
Right.
I was surprised I did a Mon Mothma for this round for Andor, because usually like female characters don't get their own action figure. We still have like a Leia
Right.
from Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker. So it's just like where are all the character toys? Like I understand that there's a market for stormtroopers, but you can only make a stormtrooper so many times before you're just buying the same action figure in a different box.
Hmm.
Uh, so
Yep. Yep.
so I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I do think that they are making the amounts that they want, because I think again the collector's market is consuming all of those toys. But I don't, yeah, I don't think that I don't think that they care ultimately, and I don't think that Disney cares either, because like they're getting the money that they want. But I don't think that it's fulfilling the needs of everyone else. I don't think, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm probably more nuanced than I can probably express, but that's just my perspective as as someone that
Well,
fairly
it,
recently got into collecting Black Series, and I don't even collect them all. It's just like the characters that I like; those are the ones that I get because I like to get them
right.
signed at conventions. But I don't know.
But yeah, you're seeing it. You're running into these same problems, right?
That's frustrating because you
Um.
wanna just get you just want the you just want it, right? Because oh,
Yes. Yeah.
fan
Yeah.
expo's coming up, whoever's there, I just wanna get that crap signed, and the show's been out for a year, but I still don't have a figure of your dumb face, so I can just get it there.
Right.
It's, so
Right.
why is Funko getting Funkos out quicker than Hasbro? It's like they're talking to Lucasfilm at the same time, so I don't
Hmm.
know. But even Funko too is like doesn't have as much, I don't feel anymore, so I don't know.
Yeah. There you go. Rob's Green says Gus is 100% right. They don't care. I mean, it's true. I mean, I hate to say it, but it doesn't. I mean, unless they want to come out and say something otherwise, it's hard not to see it that way. Perception or not. Here's something else too. Like and again, I'm not a big collector. I mean, I got stuff back here, but it's just because I throw money at it because it's cool. But for the most part, I would say I'm not a huge collector. But I do follow it. And one of the more recent things that I've been following is this HasLab thing. Right? They've got the motto of where fans come first, and yet and the last two entries, which were the what was it, the Riva lightsaber and then the Rancor, never saw light of day. Right? They never made it
Yeah,
out. They didn't
I
get enough
prefer those
people.
to, like, have my dumb face on a toy. Like, I do not care. Like, I see this mug every day. I don't need a
Right?
toy to remind me about this.
Yeah.
So I rather have Reva's lightsaber. I mean, that was
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
crap was cool. Yeah.
It was cool, but and those things, like, they don't make it. They don't have enough backing and that sort of thing. And yet at the same time, there are people that have been screaming for whatever Mando is calling his ship. I don't even know if we have a name. We've been calling it the Razor Wing on this show, or at least I have. Maybe Jonesy won't claim it unless you like it, then he'll claim it. But we've been calling it the Razor Wing for lack of a better name. But there are fans screaming, "Why don't you just make something like that?" That seems like a no brainer to do that rather than going for anything else really at this point.
Mhm.
Again, capitalizing on the popularity and marketability of the Mandalorian, but. Do you do any of the HasLab stuff? And have you been following some of the more recent? I'm going to call them failures because they just didn't happen.
And passively, I follow a couple of like Instagram accounts that track all the collecting things. So through that, I know that things succeed or fail. But ultimately, like those things, like I'm not gonna back any toy. It's like okay, you gotta give me the goods first before I pop out I put out the cash. I did all the pre-orders
Hmm.
for all the Andor stuff because those, I was just like, okay, that's legit. Let's get those. But I don't know. For me, it's like I said, like Black Series, a couple Funkos maybe, and like those. The one things I have been impressed by are the Force Effects Elite lightsabers.
Yeah,
Those are actually pretty awesome. I have the Ray one, the Dark Saber, and they're incredible. I mean, they're worth the price of admission. They're pretty expensive,
sure.
but they're actually like very well done, very well crafted. They, makes me feel like a kid again because I'm like, oh crap, this reminds me of my plastic crappy lightsaber when I was 12 years old. But
Right.
this one I will not swing
Yeah.
because it's expensive. And the new Darth Vader one that they have is like I'll see if I gift it to myself on Christmas. But and I saw they announced a new revamped version of Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber, and
Oh wow.
that's my favorite lightsaber ever. So so we'll see when it comes out if it's worth the price of admission. But
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, they've been doing a pretty good bang up job with the lightsabers there. One retailer, I guess one I don't know, licensee that's been killing it, I think, has been Lego.
mhm,
And they've always done a really good job, right? I mean, you think back with some of the earlier Lego sets, but I mean, more recently here, it started with like the Falcon, the Star Destroyer. Now we got the gunship. There's
right.
the freaking AT-AT or AT-AT, depending on where you grew up. All those have. I mean, granted, they're very high price, but even if you look at lower sets,
Mhm,
right? They have. I mean, there's a set for Andor that came out. There was a set, several sets that came out for Mando, and the minifig is just like this whole nother market. It's
mhm,
a whole collecting industry in itself, right? But I think they've done a pretty good job, I think, of getting those licenses,
mhm.
getting stuff to market when it launches, when it's still relevant and doesn't, not 3 months after it's over and just sits on a shelf.
Right.
And it's got, Lego's always had a good thing. But what do you? I mean, do you collect Legos and or Lego? I'm sorry, and someone's going to correct me on that because I know you're not supposed to put an S on it, but I still do. Do you collect Lego or do you follow that, or do you have anything that you've been
I'm very
looking at eyeballing?
I very passively follow Lego because every time I've been tempted to just buy one, then my adult brain kicks in. It's just like, Goose, you live in a one-bedroom apartment, you have no space. Uh, but it's like, yeah, it's gonna be fun to
You're going to be
build it.
sleeping with that
Right.
gunship.
It's like you're gonna be yeah, you're gonna have fun building it, but then after you're done, it's like, where the hell are you gonna put it? So
Exactly.
and it's like, and let's be honest too. Like I'm a single person, and first thing that if I bring someone over, the first thing they see is a Millennium Falcon. I don't think that's gonna bode well for me. So I have optics to worry about, even though I
Right.
already have this shrine. But I figure maybe books are safe. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know
It's more
maybe if I had yeah,
studious.
maybe if I have a home and then I have like a basement or an attic or something, and I have space to, display all these things, maybe then, but for the time being, uh, having Lego collecting is not sustainable,
Yeah. Right.
for this point in my life.
But if you did, you would be throwing them down.
For some, I think the thing is complicated for me too because if I'm gonna, because that's one of the reasons that I do like Black Series over Funkos because they're like more screen accurate, right? To the characters and whatnot. So I like things that like look like the movie.
Oh,
Hence
okay.
why,
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's
hence
fair.
why I also like the lightsabers because they're pretty close replicas. So
Sure.
I think I would be more inclined to like something like Hot Toys or something because they're the characters or something like that. So for ships, I would want something that's more like an actual not one to one in scale, a one to one, reproduction
Right. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
Star Destroyer
With the
or the
look. Yeah.
Falcon or Luke's X-wing or something like that. That's more where I live because the
Hmm.
Lego's cool, but it's not it doesn't look like the actual prop. So
Right.
but that's just me. That's just me. Because I don't know.
Yeah. And by the way, Jonesy just chimed in, and I'm going to give you the same advice. Don't settle, man. You put your Legos out there, you put your toys out there, and if she's the one, she'll love them.
Yeah,
Okay. Don't sell yourself short,
that's
buddy.
true. That's true. Thank you.
You'll be happier in the long
I'll put
run.
that on my dating profile.
Right. Okay, let's segue into publishing because I want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on there. This is where I think you said it earlier. I'm with you. Like so far, I think they've been doing an amazing job on the
Mhm,
publishing side, not only in the content but in attracting some of the some of these writers that they've got.
Yeah.
Some of the storylines themselves have been really great. I think the only bruise is some of the publishing woes that we've seen, some of the release date woes that we've seen.
Mhm.
Delays are going to happen. We went through a pandemic, and I get
Supply
that.
chain.
Yeah, supply chain stuff, right? Solar flares, whatever it was that was causing books to not get there on time. We're starting to see some of that even now. Like we're coming into phase 2 of the High Republic, and already, we got Convergence, which was delayed. We've got the first 2 books. We got them kind of late. So, I mean, it seems like that's still residual, maybe. I don't know if that's fair even to say, because there's really been nothing about it. They've not announced anything or said anything as to why. But apart from that, right, set that aside, I think they've been doing a really good job, especially with High Republic. But what about you?
No, I 100% agree. Like, I think look, my shelves is filled with books, and especially like that's the problem with having so many Star Wars books. I'm falling behind on all my other books, so it's just like, and I read slow too, so it's kind of like, oh, but it's just stop. I just need to, I just need to get on top of this, and it's a lot, but that's good. It's a good problem to have,
Yeah.
and I'm really enjoying it. And I think that the cool thing, especially with High Republic, is that you do have one, like the overarching narrative that connects all of the
Mhm.
books, which I think was something that was missing from publishing before High Republic, having a continuing series. Because I think that was something cool about the EU. You would have a series. It wasn't just trilogies. This is like
Yeah.
New Jedi Order. It's just, I don't know how many books were in that series, but
It was at least 75 that I remember, but yeah.
yeah, like that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? But
Right. No, I don't
but
know
it's
if
still
that's true,
cool
but
because it's like, yeah, you're still
yeah.
invested in those stories. And like at some point, like I was getting a little tired of trilogies. It's just like, okay, just give me a continuing story. And I think High Republic is
Mhm.
delivering to an extent. I don't think it's obviously going to be as expansive as New Jedi Order, but like something like this, I think was needed and required. And I've been very happy with it because you can engage with it from whatever point of view that you want to do it. You want to read the YA stuff, you can do that. If you want to read the kid stuff, you can do that too, or the adult novels or the comic books. There's so many different ways to get into High Republic that I think has been like a really successful publishing effort and really fresh perspective on Star Wars because Light of the Jedi really kicked that into gear. And in terms
Yep.
of like setting up a new Star Wars that's still Star Wars, but it's different enough that you can just invest yourself in it. And I think it's been really, really well received. I mean, the High Republic community on Twitter seems like they're having a really good time with all these characters,
Yeah, right.
and the authors look really, really enthused, and they're really excited about telling these stories. And it's been really exciting to read those stories too. So like, I'm very happy with them. I'm very jealous that you got 3 Path of Deceit, because we'll talk about that later.
Right.
But yeah, no, I ordered my copy, so I'm really excited to dig into that to see, because I was just like, oh, we're going back into the past. It's like, what's happening? But
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure. Obviously, they have all this planned, so we'll see where it goes. I am a little sad that they're not going to keep the gold going on because now it's
Mhm.
gonna be blue, so it's not gonna feel cohesive. But that's a nitpick. But yeah, publishing has been wonderful. And again, like, and to move away from High Republic, the Thrawn trilogy just hit all those notes for me. Like I loved, especially Chaos Rising was amazing, and Ronin was just a gift. I really, really loved that book.
That book
So
was way too smart for Star Wars,
yes,
but it was beautifully written. Like,
yes.
my God, it was so good.
So yeah,
Yeah.
publishing is just incredible right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like, all of that, the it's almost like a testament to the old adage of, you measure twice, cut once,
Hmm.
right? We're seeing, I think, from my perspective, we're seeing the success of the High Republic series because a lot of planning went into that.
Hmm.
From a long time ago, they got these guys together. They mapped out all this stuff. I mean, it says a lot for how do you getting all the creatives in a space, knowing where your start, your middle, and
Hmm.
your end is, right? All of that is kind of why we're seeing the success of the stories and the cohesiveness, right? And
Hmm.
the coalition of all these different books coming together. So on that regard, I think they've done a great job. Now, it may not be everybody's cup of tea,
Hmm.
right? I get that. It just really depends on what you're looking for. And I will say one thing that I feel is fair criticism is I've heard a lot of people, and I've tried to push the High Republic on a lot of, like, anybody I could, right? But I do get back typically there's a lot of characters, and like I can't even keep up with the number of characters, and I get it 100%. I will say this because I can't say anything till Tuesday. There's even more characters coming. Like when we get into like phase 2. Yeah. So it's like you're having to go through all this again. And so I can see where people, and on top of that, it's like you said, when we were talking about the EU, it can be intimidating for somebody to go, where do I start in the EU? Well, the High Republic is getting to that point, in my opinion. We're now going into phase 2. And let's say you got somebody that's interested in coming on board, right? Where you're naturally going to send them back to the very beginning, but there are a lot of books now that have come out. And I just wonder what is the traction going to be at this point, given there's so much that they've got to do to read and catch up. The beauty of phase 2, again, without revealing anything, is that it is far enough separated that you're not having to lean on the experiences or the stories that came before it. But you're going to have to go back and read those at some point. I mean, because that's just the way the story's created. So yeah, that would be the only thing that I would say is kind of been a drawback so far.
No, and I
just
definitely,
number of
I
characters.
100% agree with that criticism because, and you compare it with the films. The films, there's lots of characters in the films, but ultimately they're around the trio, and then what happens to
Correct.
them. So like, as long as you're,
Right, the core.
as long as you're with them, you're gonna be fine. But especially with even actually the YA have a lot of characters too. It can be overwhelming. I think the comic books have been, and I don't read the High Adventures. I only read the main High Republic run. That one seems like it's a little more focused because it's just about Kiev, and she's the main character, and like you can just follow her story. And I think
Keeves, Kier, now Evar. Yep.
yeah, so
Evar.
that's I think the most streamlined of all the stories. But I think the other books, definitely have a lot going on. It's not you need a flow chart. You gotta like understand who is who,
Yep.
or maybe not. Just turn off your mind and enjoy the journey, which is what I do. Sometimes like, hey, it's like, hey, I'm not participating in the Schmodown. I don't need to know trivia. So like,
Right.
so I can just forget who you are and just pick you up in the next book. But it's still fun. It's still fun.
So on the last thing before we move on to television, which should be a nice hot topic. Before we move on to that, the comics, I've enjoyed them. Like I've really enjoyed what Marvel's been doing. The Charles Soule stuff that he did on Vader is amazing. The Afra stuff that's coming out has been really good. I've enjoyed the little limited Kenobi series that we got. That was pretty cool. Probably losing some steam now that the Kenobi series is over, but pick that up. There's some pretty good stuff there. Of course, we got Dark Horse coming back into the publishing fold, so pretty excited about them. Just because that's kind of who I grew up with when reading comics. Star Wars comics was Dark Horse stuff. But I think I don't even know it's a stain. It's not specific. It's not exclusive to to Star Wars. But the number of variants that come out for comics these days is absolutely insane. And there are people that are just as insane, like Jonesy, who will buy all the variants and encourage them to continue to do so. Jonesy, I'm talking to you. Stop doing it. But it does feel like I stopped. Like he got me hooked on this thing, and I bought like for the High Republic. I was buying all of it. I mean, I have a stack of comics for them that are just variants because of Jonesy, and I'm blaming him. But I don't know if is that. And I don't know, you may not know the answer. If Jonesy, if you're still listening, feel free to chime in. I just don't know if that's a state of, are they trying to make up for, print being dead and they don't have the sales that they had like in the 90s when, they were selling millions of copies of comics these days. And so they got to make up that profit somewhere. And so through variants and through people that are collectors and willing to spend, $50, $75 on a single issue and collect all the variants, do they make up some of that profit that is now gone because of the changing times?
I mean, I know next to nothing about comic books and that whole like the industry as a whole in terms of like its finances and how it's doing in the post print world. But everything I have read, at least about High Republic, is that it's doing extremely well in terms of like its print runs, and they've gone up to
Sure.
third, fourth, and fifth.
Oh,
printing.
fourth, fifth printings, yeah, for sure.
So at least in that department, I know it's doing well. I don't know about the other Star Wars runs, how they're doing. I suspect that they're doing fine. Star Wars always does fine, I imagine.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like everything, it's supply and demand. I would imagine it's like, hey, if people are buying it, then let's give them more of what they want. Especially because all the variant stuff is cool. Like I got a couple of them myself. I mean, not too many because I really like those Phil Noto covers for the main High Republic ones. So I'm just like, I don't need the variants because I like this one more. But yeah, it's
no. I got some you need, but we'll talk after the show.
I'm
kidding. But let's move to television. Television is, of course, in my opinion, it really is the hot topic right now, right? Movies, we've saved that for last for obvious reasons, but I want to get your thoughts just kind of in the current landscape, and we've already kind of touched on Andor, but specifically around like, how are you feeling about? I think we've already talked about the themes in that, so I want to talk more or focus more on like the links of the shows. There's a lot of debate about whether or not Star Wars television needs to be 30 minutes, or does it need to align with House of Dragon or Rings of Power? They're cranking out 1 hour shows, and then when we get like Andor, I mean, it's like 35 minutes, then it was 40 minutes, 35. There are people that are feeling like, man, how come we can't get like the 1 hour? How come we can't get 12 episodes, 1 hour each, 12 hours of solid time,
right,
as opposed to these smaller chunks of stories? Do you think there's any merit there? Do you see where they're coming from? How do you feel about it?
I mean, I obviously think that there's some merit because everyone's opinion is valid. But
Sure.
and I was one of those people, right? When like Mando was announced and we saw like what the length of the episodes were going to be. I'm just like, oh, why? I mean, we got Disney money here. Why are we,
Yeah,
cutting
exactly.
ourselves short here and like not
Mm-hmm.
do long episodes? But once I started seeing the show and started realizing like the power of its storytelling, I started realizing that length doesn't mean quality, and I think that there's mis uh, a misperception right now, especially with films, that the longer the movie is, the better it is. And that's why,
Mm.
like all these Disney remakes and the original Disney movie is 100 is a an hour and 20 minutes long, and then the remake has to be 2.5 hours long or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Avengers Endgame has to be 4 hours. And it's like all the movies try to be long now for the sake of being long because apparently that's just prestige. HBO Max is everything's an hour, and now Amazon Prime, Rings of Power is also an hour. So I'm not knocking that. I think that's great too. And like I said, there's a space for everything. But getting back to Star Wars, once I saw Mando and saw how much story they're able to craft and place into one episode, and I felt satisfied after like those 20, 30 minutes were done. I was just like, maybe we don't need an hour because maybe an hour would just like be a slog. I feel like most of the shows have been able to like really hone in on what they want to say and show in one episode, that they just trimmed it to be the perfect amount of content. And I haven't felt like I'm wanting for more in Mando, Obi-Wan, or Andor. I think that they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like they've been like perfect amount of storytelling in one episode. Uh, Maybe I mean, I think Book of Boba Fett maybe should have been like a longer series, but that's a different conversation. But in terms of like episode lengths, I feel like we're good. Like, would I take longer
Yeah.
episodes? Of course, but I think that they're
Sure.
doing an excellent job with their screenwriters to like actually put in everything that they need to, because a lot happens in a very short amount of
Right.
screen time. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like it, I can see the point of how come they get an hour and we don't. Even like like you think about Netflix, right? You think about Stranger Things. They finished, what was it, the last 2-3
Oh,
episodes, 2.5 hours long, right?
too much. Yeah.
And to be fair, and I'm a huge Stranger Things fan,
Same.
so don't even get me started. And you guys just need to chill out if you get pissed at this. But like, there was so much they could have cut out.
Yeah.
I enjoyed all of it. Right, the Hopper series, the whole Hopper story, they could have really trimmed that down. I even felt the stuff that was going back on at the lab, right, or with 11 and the flashbacks and all that. I felt like that could have been trimmed down a lot too, right? So did I enjoy the longer links? Absolutely. When I saw that 2.5 hours, like, man, I'm sitting my couch, I've got my my popcorn, and I'm just gonna really just soak it all in. However, if I'm being objective, like truly objective about it, they probably could have trimmed that back. To your point, I think Star Wars has done a pretty good job of being surgical and being concise and being very to the point with what they were, like you said, trying to tell the story they need to tell. And so I can see where that can come across as being like, hey, we're getting shorted, especially when we see these other guys cranking out 1 hour shows, right? 1 hour plus. I totally get that. But I would say that overall, the state of live of television, Star Wars television, is an amazing point, right? You talk about the technology. You got the volume, the onset of that's only going to get better. It's going to
Yep.
give us more abilities to tell these very broad and expansive Star Wars stories that we could never have done, 20 years ago without huge budgets and
Mhm.
putting them up on the big screen. So I think they're, and then you've got people like the Filonis, and you've got John Favreau's. You've got everybody that's come on board recently for they've announced for doing television series, the directors, the writers. You've got a mix now of really cost effective development
Mhm.
of television. You've got great talent, and you've got a medium. Right, you've got a forum in Disney Plus where you're not you're not beholden to like these corporate entities anymore.
Mhm.
It's your television show. You can do 35 minutes, or if you want to do an hour and a half, you can do an hour and a half, right? I think they put themselves in a pretty good position. And I think not, and we'll come back to this in just a second here. I think when you look at the movie landscape, that becomes a very difficult decision for Disney to say, like, why? Like, why go through all of that when we're like
Mhm.
living off the land, like
Right.
big time right now with television?
No, I 100% agree. I think that, yeah, that I think that unfortunately, the movie industry at cinemas is at risk, and that's very sad prospect for me because I love going to the movies. I've been going to
Oh, we all do. Yeah, absolutely.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
some people go to church. I go to the movies. It's just like that's my temple, and
Right.
it's such
Yeah.
a surreal experience. Just like be in this dark room with a giant screen, and it's really magical. So for me, it's very sad this whole advent of streaming and what it's doing. Not that I am pro streaming, like I love that crap. I want as much content on that
Sure.
on my TV as I could possibly get, but I don't want it to be at the expense of the cinema experience because that's something that's really truly special. And I will compare it to this. Like I was very privileged to be able to go to LA a couple weeks ago to be able to see the Andor premiere there at El Capitan
Oh
Theater.
man,
And
see, I get path of the seat. You got Premiere to Andor. We're even, buddy. As far as I'm concerned,
touche,
you probably still
touche.
have the advantage. But go on, go on.
Touche, touche. I accept. I'll calm down. But you know what I'm saying. Like you're there, and like
Yeah,
yeah, it's cool. You like to. I mean, to watch Andor like on my couch, and I really enjoy it. Have it there. I have a pretty good setup, so it's great. But it was something completely different to watching it in the
yeah,
theater. So that's why it's kind of sad to see that like Disney might be going to that direction, especially with like the types of films that they're deciding to put out, because obviously they want maximize those profits and they want event films. Like they want their
hmm,
Avengers and they want those type of big hitters that are sure hits that are going to make $1 billion. And
right.
why risk it with Star Wars right now? Because Solo underperformed. Rise of Skywalker did well, but probably not as well as obviously The Force Awakens and Last Jedi. So like they got diminishing returns there in film, and in Disney Plus, Star Wars apparently is doing extremely well. So it's just like, yeah, why roll the dice? If we're gonna make a movie, maybe we'll just do a straight to Disney Plus movie, which I think is horrible because Star Wars wasn't made for the big screen, and that's what grabbed everyone's uh, you know investment in it because that's how we fell in love with it, watching it in this giant screen and like seeing
Yeah, that was our entry
that
point.
Star
Yeah,
Destroyer
yeah,
fly over you, and that's something you'll never get from TV, no matter how big of a TV you get. I'm sorry, you're not gonna get that awe of a giant screen in the cinema. So
sure.
I do think that Star Wars future is at Disney Plus, obviously, because look at all the content that we're getting for it. But I don't want the cinema avenue to be closed for it because that's where that's the origin of Star Wars, and we should
Right.
always go back to it. But I think it should be a special moment. Because I think one of the and I know we're gonna talk about the films later, but since we're talking about, TV, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Go, go, go.
TV, I think is more sustainable in terms of, like, continuous consumption, right? Like, you're ready for the next show because, I mean, that's how TV works, and that's the an extension of streaming as well. And
Hmm.
Star Wars has never been that in the big screen, so I think that was the problem that we had, back when the sequel trilogy and Rogue One and Solo came out. It was too much Star Wars, too fast, too hard, too furious. We have to compare it with like how we were consuming Star Wars before. When A New Hope came out, 77, then 8, then Empire Strikes Back in 1980, and then Return of the Jedi in 83. So we have 3 years in between each movie, and then there was like
Right.
almost 20 years. went before the prequels, and then again 3 years in between films, and then 10 years before Force Awakens. So there's been gaps waiting for Star Wars to come back to the big screen that I think is what made Star Wars like a blockbuster phenomena, because like you're expecting, you're anxious for it, you're waiting for it. It's
Right.
like
The
it's that
anticipation
it's the
helped. Yeah.
yeah, it's that's I think half the game for like a Star Wars movie. It's like waiting for the next one. And then with the sequel trilogy, and then getting like a movie every year, Star Wars isn't Marvel. You know, you can sustain two MCU films a year, and you'll do some bank because that's what people are used to seeing. But Star Wars is
Yeah.
about, it's about not Star Wars works better when there's less of it in the big screen, and I think that's the lesson that I think Disney has learned. Like, let's just pump the brakes and just let people wanting to have a movie. So they work in different ways, and I think they're doing a really good job at all the TV stuff right now. But
Yeah.
I do hope that it comes back to the movie theaters, and I hope that they take their time, because they gotta get it right, and they gotta make us want it, not expect it.
Yeah. Not expected. Yeah. And I would agree. Like, I think the success of television, the current state of television is so positive that I don't think Star Wars is, I don't think Lucasfilm or Disney are saying, hey, we don't need to go back to movies. That's not at all what I'm saying.
Mm,
I think they're looking at this and going, okay, we don't need to go back right now. We need a reset. Let's figure out what the strategy is, get people on board, get people to commit, right? I mean, we see that there's a lot of movies that, like, for example, the James Bond series, right? I saw a recent article, I think it was Hollywood Reporter or somebody had an article that said they were out soliciting the next James Bond. As part of the pitch, they were trying to find somebody, an actor who was willing to commit 10 years to the series. That's a huge commitment, right? From an
mm,
actor, from a director, from the creators themselves. They don't want a one and done kind of thing. And I think for Star Wars, they probably are looking at it and going, okay, maybe a trilogy makes sense, right? So what does that look like on a map? It's probably about 9 to 10 years, right? Unless they want to get super aggressive. And so they need to strategically figure out who's going to be the producers, who's going to write it, who's going to direct it, who's going to star in it.
mhm.
That takes a lot of planning. And I don't want to sell it short, because I know people will say, well, Lucas did it and they did it for the sequel trilogy. And there's a whole lot of, that's more
Yeah,
nuance than
like,
just that,
did
right?
they? Meh.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Did they think about that? So from that perspective, I think they're just kind of saying, okay, we're doing pretty well right now. Yeah, people want the movies. They're panning for them. We get it. However, we really like Kathleen Kennedy said, we learned a lot from Solo, and they've kind of pumped the brakes, because remember, they were going to do a movie. What was it? Every 3 years,
Mhm,
2 years, or whatever it was. It was way more aggressive than
mhm,
than what we got. So from that, so I would say for television, it does feel like they are kind of just riding the coast and buying their time until they know they gotta at some point put out the movies. They've got to. They're right now they've got the model that's successful with Marvel, and
mhm,
I'm not saying they're going to mirror that model, but Marvel proves that you can do movies, make $1 billion, and still have successful television. It's not,
mhm.
they're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
You can do both of them, right? So I think from that perspective, that's kind of what they're looking at. I do want to ask you just quickly on the let's talk about the animation just very quickly,
Mhm,
because I don't think that gets a lot of attention. Uh, some of my favorite Star Wars is Star Wars Rebels,
mhm.
right? And some of my favorite Star Wars is the Clone Wars. I even liked the Resistance, believe it or not. Not much, but I did like it. There were some good
That
stories
is
in
true.
there.
That is true.
But
Yeah.
but I want to ask you, like, if you had, I mean, do you have a strong preference one way or the other? 3D versus 2D. I mean, of course, we got Visions. We got Visions 2 that's coming out, I think, next year. I mean, I know you've. It seems like you're kind of like the beer and pizza guy, right? All beer is good, all pizza's good. So just give me that. Same thing with
Kinda,
Star
kinda.
Wars.
No, I will not have a Keystone Light. I do have I do have standards.
Oh,
I
here we
do
go.
have standards with beer.
Okay,
I will
okay.
drink an old style and a PBR, but I will not go, to those.
PBR,
Yeah,
right?
no Coors Light, no Keystone. So there are
What do you think?
standards. But like I said, like
Bad Batch season 2 and Tales of the Jedi. Sorry, I just want to throw those out there as well. Like,
I'm
what are you thinking about those in
I'm really
preference?
excited. Well, the thing about preference though with those, it's odd because of the animation style being the same. It's kind of like I feel they're
Mm,
just like uh, Filoni verse stuff, which I mean it literally is. But that's a little bit disappointing to me. Like I love the animation style. Don't get me wrong; I think it looks beautiful. But the cool thing for me with like Rebels and Resistance was the whole like diversification of like what we can do with animation. Just like, oh, let's do like the more spaghetti, limbs and stuff for like Rebels, and like do like pseudo anime look for Resistance. I don't know if that's the actual style, but
Yeah, I
there.
think it's a 3D
Yeah.
shading or whatever it
But
was.
yeah, whatever,
Yeah,
which is cool. Like
2D
I
shading.
really appreciate
Yeah.
shows looking different. So that's why, to an extent, like I mean, I'm really looking forward to both shows. Don't get me wrong, especially Tales
Right.
of the
Right.
Jedi, because of the whole theming that they're gonna do, like 3 episodes for one, 3 episodes for light, dark,
Hmm.
all that stuff. But I do hope that they go back to the drawing board to like do different animation styles so that they can have a wide portfolio of what they're able to achieve artistically. Because I think Visions was a triumph. Like I really loved Visions and the fact that they gave all those different studios like a different story so they can do in different styles. For me, it was just a home run in storytelling that I want to like have more of. Obviously, we're getting Visions season 2, which is going to be even wider palette in terms of not just art but cultures. So like I'm really excited for that specifically, which is something we were talking at Triad when we were talking about all the Visions episodes. It's like, oh, it'd be nice to see like other cultures being represented, like Native American cultures and Hispanic cultures. And apparently, Lucasfilm listened to that episode. I'm gonna take credit for it. Because
Okay. Thank you, sir.
yeah, it was us. It was us. So we are getting that in Visions, but now I actually want to see it like in in LucasArts. Well,
Yep.
well, actually, it's not called LucasArts anymore, but you know what I mean.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, no, but I'm excited for everything, and I just want to I just want more diversity. I think that they're really investing in all the live action stuff, which I actually prefer, but I think that their animation stuff is just as good, and I think they should be, equal, and so we should see as much animation stuff being pumped out as all the live action stuff. Because honestly, like there's been some really, really compelling storytelling. Like you said, like in Rebels, there's some really amazing stories there, especially season 4. But we can have more of that too. And with again different I keep hammering the same point. Artistic styles, that's where I live. So that's what I want to see more. It's like just more
Yeah.
variety.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's in 2D and 3D animation has always given them the ability to tell stories on a smaller budget, right? Bigger scale stories, but smaller budget because they don't, they can draw whatever they want, right? They're not limited in that regard. So we've got some pretty good storytelling that's
Mhm.
come from all of that. And I'm with you. Like I'm excited that we're going to get more animation in whatever format that is. Yeah, can't wait to see it. And even like the Visions 2 stuff, I thought Visions was groundbreaking what it did in what it did to bring in people that were maybe like loose, if at best, or knowledgeable Star Wars people, but weren't really fans, but huge anime fans, and how it kind of
Mhm.
brought them into the fold, brought them into the mix. And again, that speaks to the broadening of that larger net that's being cast across the fandom to
Yeah.
pull more and more people in to Star Wars, which I think is a good thing for all of
And
us.
especially with the non-canonicity of it, I think was a really smart move, obviously, because then you have so
Sure,
much more flexibility to just tell
absolutely,
stories, which for me was one of the interesting things that I saw among fandom, like arguing over, because what decision in Star Wars isn't controversial amongst fandom, but people complaining
right?
about, oh, it's not canon, so why should we even watch it? And I'm just like, are you serious, my dude? Like, do you like, does
Yeah,
every story need to be part of a larger narrative for you to appreciate storytelling on its own merits? So, especially when some people complain so much about the current canon, it's just like, hey, here you go, some stories that aren't in the current canon that you can just enjoy outside of it. And I think Lucasfilm actually should kind of push that even further. I'm not saying like a what if series necessarily, but more series like Visions or books like Visions that are just like non-canon stories to just like explore Star Wars however any creator wants to do it. Because I think there would be like we saw with Ronan and Emma with Emma Miko and Ronan. There's lots of really cool stories that could be done within the Star Wars palette, but that don't necessarily that shouldn't necessarily be in the canon. And I think authors should be allowed to like do new legend stories, so to speak. So
sure, yeah. All right. Well, let's before we kind of wrap up on movies too. Well, let's move on to just the movies. The only open things I still had to discuss the movies was I wanted to. I put the question out there of like why are movies so important to us? And I think we've kind of talked about it, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think what we're both saying is it's more about the experience,
Mhm.
right? It's about sitting in that theater and getting the surround sound and getting the Star Destroyer flying over our heads. I mean, you can't replicate that. I mean, without a lot of money, it's hard to
Sure.
replicate that in our sitting on the couch in front of even the largest big screens.
Mhm.
Again,
I mean, but
money
money,
solves a lot of things.
money, true, but you still need it. But that's only like halfway there too, because
Yeah,
but
exactly. Right, right.
because you can have like you can have a Dolby Cinema in your house, but it's still a half the experience because if you don't have the community with you to like
Sure.
share that, that's the biggest part, not the biggest part, but that's half the part for me of the cinema experience as well. Because going to midnight screenings for every premiere for Star Wars and like being there in a room full of nerds just like you, sharing and like having a good time and like
And those are
sharing
the
that
hardcore
energy. Yeah.
people. Yeah, those are the real. I wouldn't say real fans because that's not fair. But those people are just as crazy as you
Mhm.
because they were passionate enough to get up at midnight and stay up. Right? They're the ones that are gonna laugh at the jokes and get the references and the Easter eggs. And it's just
Mhm.
like you said, it's that community experience that you cannot get sitting on your couch.
We
So,
should. I mean, you can if you have at least more than two friends, which like this get
well, see, I don't.
it gets harder and harder the older you get. But yeah, but like being in a crowd of like hundreds of people there, it's just it's there's nothing like it. So
Yeah,
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 it's just sharing something together, coming together, with a bunch of people you don't know in community. It's something really special, and I think that we need more of that. We need more community. We need more coming together. We need more unity and less division. So I think the cinema gives us a space to do that, come together as one, just enjoy a couple of hours together and just forget about our problems and just enjoy the ride that is Star Wars or whatever film.
yeah. So, last thing for tonight, I want to just quickly. There's, where do you see the future of Star Wars going as far as storytelling? I know this is a loaded question. It's probably not fair, but I mean, we've got like the Ryan Johnson trilogy that's been talked about. To me, that all these feel like vaporware until something
Mhm.
happens. We recently had the Patty Jenkins Rogue One, or not Rogue One, Rogue
Mhm.
Squadron movie get removed off the calendar. So people have taken that to imply that it's not going to happen. There's a Taika Waititi series or story that's out there. Where do you think we're gonna, do you have any thoughts about when we'll get back to the movies, and where do you think it's gonna go? Do you think we're gonna stay in a particular era, present time, so to speak, or are we gonna go forward and New Republic stuff, back in time, Old Republic, High Republic? What do you think? What would you want to see?
Well, it's that 100% a loaded question because like I'm always wrong about these things. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, we built an entire show on being wrong, so you're right. You're with us,
so
man.
there
Go
we
on.
go. But for example, like with Andor, like when Andor was announced, I was just like, oh my god, we don't need more shows set during the Imperial era. Like we've done,
I
like
know,
there's so much more Star Wars to explore. But then
but
but then the show came out, and it's like, okay, well, I was
yep.
absolutely wrong about that. So
Right,
so there's
right.
definitely, like, there's space to tell as long as they're good stories, there's space to tell those stories in whatever era they can be set in. But at least for me, like, if I were to project a future for Star Wars films, I think I would kinda start either going into the future or into the past. We gotta, like, change
Yeah.
eras and kinda make it feel fresh again because at least for me, like one of the downsides of the sequel trilogy, and again, I love those movies for the most part. Uh, so like I'm not trying to knock them, but one thing that was a little disappointing to me in those films is that everything just looked the same as the original trilogy. And I know that they did that on
Mm,
purpose because let's go back and like ignore the prequels because people didn't like them. And let's just connect to. I get the whole marketing shtick of it, but for me, it's just
right,
like but like look at the prequels. How many years are in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and how much everything changed in the galaxy and everything looks different. And then, like in the sequel trilogy, it's been 30 years since Return of the Jedi, and everything just looks the same. I'm just like, oh well, George Lucas taught us that no, it should not look the same.
right.
Should be different, and we should be looking at other things. And I think that's one of the positive things of the High Republic is looking at those different things in different eras. So I think if Star Wars to be maintain itself being fresh and relevant, it has to just look at different things. Or if you're going to look at different thing, the same things, have to look at it from a different perspective, which is what Andor is doing. It's still Imperial, but it's kind of a twist that we haven't seen before, and that makes it feel fresh again. So yeah, I want to see Rey in her Jedi Academy, maybe 10 years or whatever into the future, or just go back, man. Just go, thousands of years into the past. Some Lord of the Rings sci-fi. There's so much you could do with the Star Wars galaxy that I think it would be a waste to just like stay within this whole plethora of like what 60 years or whatever of the Galactic Civil
Yeah.
War and the prequels and the sequels. So yeah, but I'm probably wrong. Yeah, so
Well, thanks for putting yourself out there because, but I mean, I agree. Like, and we've said that on the show. We've been talking about where do we want to go. I think there's a lot that can be done if we go way in the future, and I think there's a lot that can be done if we go way in the past. In a lot of the problems that I think we have with storytelling in Star Wars is really we get hamstrung by
mhm.
the stuff that came and before and the stuff that comes after, right?
Mhm.
And not saying we can't do it. Andor is proof of that. It's just
Yeah.
you got to walk a fine line. There's just certain rules that you can't break, certain barriers that you can't bust through because it breaks canon, right? But if you go further enough in the future, it's open field, right? And you can kind of do whatever you want.
Mhm.
Same thing in the past, or go get out of the. You could tell a story set in whatever timeline you want, but maybe go into the outer regions, get into the Thrawn stuff, right? I mean, there's a whole thing out there. Bring the Yuuzhan Vong back,
Hey
right?
man, that's what I
As
thought.
we've been saying.
That's what I thought Rise of Skywalker was going. See, this is the problem though with like this is the problem with fan
Yeah.
theories and stuff. Like you
Yeah.
build up a movie in your mind, and then you watch the movie. It's like, oh well, it sucks because it's not what I was thinking. It's like, well, let's be
Yeah.
honest. Usually, what we think just sucks. But
Yeah.
but yeah, but like we just built up all this like lore that we set ourselves up for disappointment by because obviously they're not going to do what you thought. And I thought that's where Rise of Skywalker was kind of like, well, it's the unknown region, so obviously it's going to be something connected to that. And the Rise of Skies means there was so many theories in my mind about what going into the unknown regions meant for Rise of Skywalker. Because yeah, then you're reading all the books and it's like the setup with Thrawn and doing the thing, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, it's gonna be it's gonna be the Grisk because it's not used on Wong anymore. It's the Grisk, and it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that, and none of that happened. There was no payoff to unknown regions ultimately in Rise of Skywalker. And I was like, oh, okay. So maybe that payoff will happen with Ahsoka, since we know that Ezra and Thrawn are coming back. Maybe there'll be an unknown regions payoff there. But yeah, but that's a absolutely good point that I haven't even thought about. Yeah, the Star Wars movie that's not in the Star Wars galaxy. It's yeah, detached from that, and it can work because that's what the Thrawn trilogy, this new one, Ascendancy proved. You can make Star Wars that's kind of foreign to Star Wars because let's face it, like those books are more Star Trekky ish in a sense than we
Yeah,
used
that's a
to.
good
So
point. I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Yeah, they do feel more Star Trek in that kind of in that
in
nature,
a
but
good way, in a good way.
in a good way. Yes, right. The good things of Star Trek. I don't want to say that it is because it's not, but yeah. So no, we'll kind of just wanted to leave it there. I mean, it's been a great conversation. I think overall, if I had to put a bow on this, I would say we're in a good state, and
Yeah.
it's really about what you want and whatever you want. It's out there for you. You just got to go look for it and go align with the people that feel the same way
Mhm.
you do. There's millions and millions of people out there that are Star Wars fans. You just got to find them and stop trashing everybody else's fandom or
Mhm.
what they think is it's we're all individuals and we're all Star Wars fans. At the end of the day, we're all Star Wars
We all
fans.
want the same
Whether
thing.
even some of the more vile people, they're Star Wars fans.
Mhm.
They're just misguided and confused.
Exactly. Your words, not mine. All right.
So exactly, I'll own that one. So all right. Well, Gus, thanks for being here.
Oh,
Hey,
thank you.
listen, before you get out of here, where can people find you and your show, Triad of the Force?
Thank you. So, Trial of the Force, for those who don't know, it's just a Star Wars podcast from three Puerto Rican friends that came together to just talk about Star Wars from our Puerto Rican point of view. Since we didn't see a lot of Hispanic, Latinx, whatever podcasts out there that were talking about things from that perspective, we decided to just do that. So we've been doing that for 2 years, and we're on YouTube and all major podcasting platforms like Amazon, Spotify. Apple, all those. Just search for Try It Out the Force, and you will be able to find us. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Try It Out the Force. There's our link tree, so you can find all of our links. If you like us enough, we do have a T Public with some cool T-shirt designs that you want to give me $2 for them, I'll take them.
It's
So
about $2.
yeah, so please go there. But we would definitely appreciate if you gave us a shot. Yeah, sometimes we have cool things to say, but we're mostly wrong about everything. But we have fun doing it, and that's the important
Yeah.
thing.
No, for sure. And I would echo that we have the same kind of approach here. Usually wrong, but man, we have a good time and have a lot of fun talking about Star Wars. So before we finish up, before we wrap up, I do want to give a shout out quickly to everybody that joined us. Lots of people came in on the chat and chimed, made this very interactive. Thank you all for being here, but specifically Jonathan, Dante, Sky, Lauren, Dale, Rob, Qui-Gon J, Ash, Derby Gaming, Jonesy made an appearance, Stephanie, Joel, Gary Smith, Alex Green, Peter Dufresne, Alex, Jorge, and Vader's Girl. Kat, thanks so much for joining the live chat. Thanks for chiming in. Thanks for all your feedback and comments. And Gus, thanks so much, man, for being here. I really do appreciate you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and it was cool to get your perspective. If Jonesy doesn't work out, I'll give you a call.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk without him amongst ourselves.
We'll talk about that. Hey, don't forget, we've got Tuesday coming up here. We'll have another Patreon show in just a few days, and then, of course, we'll be breaking down episode 5 of Andor episode 5 on Thursday. So join us for the live show of that. It should be a pretty good, long, and very thorough show as you guys have come to expect. So until then, we'll see you guys.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.